More than 37 million individuals in the United States have diabetes. 1 in 5 don't even know they are diabetic. Diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. So what is that we are going to die of? Our children are going to die, or the next generation is going to die. The last century plagued humankind by infectious diseases, or what we call as communicable diseases, like tuberculosis, cholera. The next generation is going to likely die of what we call lifestyle disorders, with diabetes being one of the main ones. 2021 marks 100 years of the discovery of insulin. Yet, when we look at the nationwide prevalence of the disease, year on year, the number of people diagnosed with diabetes is increasing. The question is, have our therapeutics failed us to achieve the efficacy that we want? Or are we not diagnosing patients at the right time? It was during my childhood days when our neighbor, who was a teacher, a lady full of joy and enthusiasm, one day ended up in the hospital and had her leg amputated. It was a shock to all of us. It was on the hospital bed that she realized that she was diabetic. It all stemmed down from a small nick that happened in her foot as she was cutting her toenails, which caused an infection, got unnoticed, developed into gangrene, and ultimately had to have a leg. Many people in this world do not know that they have diabetes. It's a silent killer. It can go undetected, unnoticed, end up in organ damage. That's when you realize I have the condition. It hit me hard when family members started getting diagnosed with this condition. And it hit me hard more when my dad used to call me when I was far away from home with my master's in Liverpool saying, "Hey, your mom made my favorite dessert, and she says you can't touch it." I have friends and family around, and all I want is to have my 1 cup of Glucagon, which is a famous Indian sweet. And I had to cross-check with mom to make sure my dad was keeping up with his numbers. It felt crippling to see how someone could not enjoy the little joys in life, like eating one's favorite dessert, because you had to make sure your blood sugar levels don't rise. That's when I decided that I need to find a permanent solution to this problem. I was naive in my thought because I thought one day I would be in the lab and the next day is the miracle cure for diabetes. Reality hit me hard when I realized how complicated, time-taking, painstaking the process of drug discovery is. We all can relate to the recent release of COVID-19 vaccines, but we think that they can be quickly in the market, isn't it? What people fail not to realize is that the basic science for us to develop the mRNA technology that led to manufacturing of these vaccines took many years of basic science research that then led us to a point where we could manufacture these at a pretty fast pace. I was lucky enough to join the Holland lab at the U, where I joined a bunch of energetic, enthusiastic scientists who were driven to find a cure for this condition. The common goal is to decrease the disease burden of heavy medication and the need to take multiple insulin injections. It is when I was introduced to a molecule, a chemical called Glucagon. When we eat a meal, our body tries to break down that meal into glucose. And what happens is that this glucose, as it's circulating in the blood, signals your pancreas to release insulin. Insulin is a chemical that allows the doors of your cells to open up so that you can take in the glucose to make energy. When you are fasting, your pancreas releases another chemical called glucagon, which also comes into the blood, does a bunch of chemical reactions, and then again releases glucose so that your low blood sugar comes back normal. If you ask anyone about diabetes, the first thing that they will tell you is high blood sugar levels are less than insulin. What we realized was diabetics, apart from having less insulin, had high blood glucose levels. The work done in our lab was interesting because when we made mice diabetic, the picture that you see on the screen is a section of a mouse pancreas. Every blue dot indicates a cell. A red dot will indicate a cell that makes glucagon, and a green dot will indicate a cell that makes insulin. When we gave this mice that became diabetic, normal standard treatment of insulin, you do not find any green dots. That's what you will see in real world. Type 1 diabetics will have to take exogenous outside insulin because their body's pancreas have no more insulin producing cells. Remarkably, when we gave a drug that blocked the receptor to which glucagon came and bound, you see a marked increase in the number of these green colored cells. And it was remarkable finding for us because here we are, have a mice that became diabetic and we gave it a drug that was able to increase the number of insulin producing cells. We have a long way to go in translating this finding from the bench to the bedside to the clinic. But my goal is to try and tease out the roadblocks that ultimately control high blood sugar levels. One of these would be glucagon. And ultimately, my goal is to ensure that my dad need not worry about the one extra glucagon that he has to eat. Diabetes, the diagnosis of diabetes is not something one would cheerfully accept. It's often associated with fear and anxiety. But I would like to leave you all with this famous quote by Matthew. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we